start going around the room and introducing ourselves, your name, job position, your organization, and a real quick statement about your mission so that we all know who we're talking to. And I'll start with what it looks like with me. So I'll ask Cheryl to start off, unmute, and let us know who you are.
Good morning. Thank you very much for doing this. My name is Cheryl Kimball. I'm the manager of philanthropy at Huggins Hospital. It's been a very interesting time, as you can imagine, to be working at a hospital. I've been there about 6 years, and I'm not from the medical field before, so it's been quite a ride. And of course, our mission, we actually have what I think is a great mission. And our mission as a hospital is, quote, to empower the fulfillment of life through better health. Thanks.
Sorry, it's almost like you read it. You know your mission statement well. It's great. Elisa, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Elisa Jankowitz. I work for Junior Achievement of Greater Fairfield County in Connecticut. And I am the Special Events Manager and Major Gifts Officer on the development team. We are a small but mighty team, so we all wear many hats. And our mission at Junior Achievement, we actually are an international organization with a large national presence with 103 different regional offices, so Fairfield County being one of them. And our mission is to serve K through 12 students and partner with our community partners, educators, and corporations to deliver programs that are not necessarily offered in schools to teach kids soft skills and entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and career readiness.
Lori, please.
Hi, my name is Lori Johnson. I'm with the Nashua River Watershed Association. I'm the development director there. We're an environmental group, and our mission is long, so I'll give you a summary of our program work, which is that we provide water and land protection programs and environmental education programs in 32 communities that comprise our watershed. And our communities are quite varied in terms of both the geography and the demographics. So as we move forward, we're thinking about a lot of issues like climate resiliency and environmental justice, and what that programming will look like will vary significantly between the different communities.
Thank you. Christian, please.
Hey everyone, my name is Christian McCormick. I'm the Director of Development for Special Olympics Massachusetts. Our mission is essentially just providing training and competition opportunities for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And like I said, Special Olympics Massachusetts, so we serve the entire state. So from Western Mass all the way down to the Cape, Boston, the whole state. So thank you for having us today.
Christian, I don't know if you know this, but I was campaign counsel to get you into that new building you're enjoying right now.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Bates, please.
Got to unmute myself there. My name is Bates Childress. I'm the Senior Development Officer at Glens Falls Hospital. We are a community hospital that serves about a 6,000 square mile area. And our annual budget is, our annual goal is $2.25 million a year, typically. Our mission is to improve the health of people in our region by providing access to exceptional, affordable, and patient-centered care every day and in every setting. And so as you can tell, I read that off our little
well done
sheet. And which I keep on my desk at all times. Anyway, so that's kind of our story. And like Cheryl, I've been here for 6 years, and this is my first healthcare job, but I've been doing development for about 13 years now.
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Rebecca, please.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Allen. I'm with Samaritans. And our mission is to prevent suicide and offer hope and support to those that are affected by suicide. So we have a lot of groups for folks that have had suicide loss. And then we also offer a 24/7 helpline that services the state.
Is it Jane? Keo? It's Jay
Oh,
Keo.
sorry, it's Julia. I should
Julia,
put my
sorry.
name on. I'm so sorry. Hi, thank you. I am from Health Imperatives. Our mission is to improve the health and well-being of low-income families and individuals in Southeastern Mass. We serve about 20,000 people a year through a variety of programs, and I'm the CEO.
And finally, Shirley.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Shirley Acevedo Buontempo, and I'm the founder and strategic officer of Latino Youth College Access. Founded in 2012, our organization's mission is to empower first generation to college Latino youth on their pathways to and through college completion. And we do this through providing culturally relevant bilingual support to them and their families, ensuring that they successfully navigate and graduate from college.
Well, where are you located?
We're located in White Plains, New York, and we serve 4 partner school districts that are 50% or more Hispanic and are looking to expand our capacity to serve all 7 school districts and more.
Well, thank you all for joining. They'll probably be smart. Yes, Rebecca.
Oh, I didn't introduce myself. I guess
Oh,
they're 2
I'm
Rebeccas.
terribly sorry. Terribly sorry.
That's okay. They're 2 Rebeccas. So I just have a new title as of this week. My title is Deputy Director for Advancement and Administration, but I have been the Director of Development at the Fitchburg Art Museum for 6 years, and my role is just changing slightly, but I'm still in charge of development. And we are a mid-sized art museum in North Central Mass, and we're the largest cultural institution in North Central Mass. We are very community-focused art museum. We have a lot of partnerships. We do a lot of work with the Fitchburg Public Schools, Fitchburg State University, and we are, from our mission, a catalyst for learning, creativity, and community building. We're very involved in the economic development of our city as well. So, yeah. And I wanted to say hi to Lori. We live in the same town and our kids went to school together. So it's nice to see you.
All world. Well, thank you. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone else? Okay, great. So you have ventured into an approach to learn. And using the Socratic method, which is essentially a method of asking questions and learning from questions and learning from the answers. So here's how it's going to roll. Several of you sent in challenge or opportunity statements that we will address. The first one we were going to address is from Jim Chase, but Jim is not here at the moment, so we'll pass on that. But we're going to begin by whoever the member, as I'm calling them, are. We will ask questions of the member to address the statement that they provided. Then the member will revisit the challenge or opportunity statement that they originally made to see if they wanted to reframe it, possibly revise it. Then we're going to talk about solutions. Here comes Jim Chase. Then we're going to talk about solutions that we have come up with as a group based on the questions and the answers that were provided. Then the member, morning, Jim, you're going to get to introduce yourself in a second. Then the member will listen to the feedback, the solution feedback, and see what resonates with him or her, and make a commitment as to what they might do in the near future to address their challenge or their opportunity. And then we'll see what everybody got a value from it. So Jim, if you would just introduce yourself, title, organization, and mission of the organization.
I apologize for logging on a little late. My name is Jim Chase. I am the president and CEO here at the Seacoast Science Center in Rye, New Hampshire. The reason I was late was because I was notified about a half an hour ago that we have a water main break and our building has no water, so we've just had to close for the public. And it took a little bit of stuff to make that happen. So, but I'm here and I'm excited to participate. The mission of the Science Center is to inspire conservation of our blue planet, sort of in a general sense, but specifically to advance coastal and ocean conservation through education. We're blessed with a 15,000 square foot facility in a 130 acre oceanside state park. So we have a tremendous natural resource that we are the stewards of, and it's a tremendous educational tool for us to advance our mission.
Beautiful, beautiful setting. Thank you, Jim, and welcome. So
Thank
what's a major donor pipeline? I'm just going to sort of review that for everyone. And Copley-Raff has its own take on that, and you may have additions to this, but certainly loyal donors, people who have given you many gifts. And you should all have the link to the document I'm reading from, incidentally, that I put in chat. Someone who's given, total giving is high. May just be a few gifts, but they've given a lot. They're high average gift over time, a high one-time gift. Perhaps someone who you have been referred to who has high capacity that you want to consider for your pipeline. Someone whose philanthropic behavior supports the kind of mission that your organization has, but they've not yet been introduced to you or have given to you. And if they're a large political donor, there's a linear relationship between those who give generously for political contributions and philanthropy. So if you can identify the fact, which is public record, that they're large political donors, there's a good chance that they can be both philanthropic and have capacity. Okay. So let us begin, shall we? And Jim, you came right on time because we're leading off with your opportunity statement. And you're going to be the member. We're going to ask you a lot of questions. You're going to give us your brief responses to the questions so that we can help you identify some solutions. So your statement, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to open that link. Is everyone else opening a document with those statements? Okay, let me try again. Just click on the link. Sorry.
All right. It'll open in your browser. I'm going to read Jim's statement. We are about to launch a sizable capital campaign. We have reasonable confidence in securing the leadership gifts at the top of the campaign. However, our donor base is somewhat narrow, posing the challenge of fleshing out the midsection of a traditional gift pyramid. How can we leverage the campaign activity to build out this mid-level major donor pipeline? So it's a good opportunity and challenge at the same time. So let us begin, and I'll be typing as best I can to capture the questions. Begin, just everyone's off mute or what have you, and ask Jim some questions.
Jim, I have a question. Oh, I don't know how to, should we raise our hands or something?
No, just, hey, it's a small enough group, we can just do it. Go ahead.
So as it relates to giving levels, just curious, as it, that you referenced mid-level versus major donor, and just wanted to understand the difference there.
Sure. In my, well, there's a couple of filters here I need to apply. When I talk about the top level of the pyramid, those are folks that I expect to be making seven-figure gifts. And we have a pretty good chance at fleshing out 70 to 80% of the campaign that way. I sort of expect it to be sort of top heavy in that regard. Our major donors historically are people who give us $1,000 or more a year. As a science-based museum, we are of the mold where, especially historically, 70% of our revenue is mission-related earned income. So admissions, retail, school programs, camps, even unrelated business income tax, sort of rentals and things. That's 80% of where we live. And we can get away with it because we have a cash flow from that. We need to develop a broader philanthropic base. And part of the strategy to do that for us is to engage in the campaign, mostly because we have real needs and the community has illustrated to us that they expect more from us. So we're trying to build out that sort of philanthropic relationship with many of our constituents in the community, in a way that we can generate cash to reinvest in the organization on an annual basis. The growth in our mission areas covers a 3% cost of living increase, for folks, but it doesn't give us the cash to reinvest to grow the institution. Did I answer the question? I don't know that I really did, but I just kind of started vamping. Larry knows I do that, so he'll mute me.
Yeah, no, just gathering an understanding of like the majority of your gifts, at what level they are, and then what you consider a major gift.
Yeah, and in my head, it's $5,000 to start, but historically it's been smaller than that, and we treat it smaller than that. We create a major donor pipeline, cultivation pipeline, that begins at $300 gifts. And we have to revisit all of that as we move forward. Return on investment is kind of, questionable there.
Hi, Jim. Cheryl Kimball. I'm at Huggins Hospital in Wolfboro. I grew up on the seacoast of New Hampshire, and I was on the Odiorn Point board back in the late 80s, and I was not a fan of the Seacoast Science Center being created, so I'm glad I did not stay on the board because I absolutely love the place. Anyway, so that revealed, I guess one question I would ask is, how far afield from the seacoast do you expand your philanthropic reach, or try to expand your reach?
Yeah, our footprint, our constituency footprint, I think about as a 60-mile radius around where we are. Now, bear in mind, a significant portion of that is ocean. So it's a funny shape. One thing that we have done since 2014 to sort of increase that footprint is, with our designation by NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, to be the Marine Mammal Rescue Response Authority for New Hampshire, we've taken on the territory in northern Massachusetts down through Salisbury, Newburyport, Newbury, Essex, Ipswich, to kind of increase our footprint there. But we've done very little to leverage that to date.
Good questions.
That is a good question.
I have a question. You mentioned that 70% of your income is earned revenue, and you mentioned that you had a major gift pipeline and thinking somewhere between $300 to start thinking and maybe $1,000 gift. Can you tell me a little bit more about the activities that you do to reach with constituents that make up the other 30% of the revenue, and also
Sure.
your major gift pipeline now?
Couple of things. For the donors who are in that $1,000 and up range, and I've probably got, I don't know, 75 people in that category that are making gifts in excess of $1,000 right now. We have something called the Ocean Ambassador Society. And what we do is we put on perhaps 5 or 6 special events every year that give them access to behind the scenes stuff that happens in our network. We have taken them to oyster farms, and we've given them a behind the scenes work sense of how that works. We talk about the conservation issues in that aquaculture. We introduce them to the aquaculturalists, the resource managers, and on those particular events, I bring in a sommelier and we do a wine pairing the oysters that we're eating. So we do things like that. We bring them to certain places in the research or science world that they would not normally have access to, and we try and engage them that way. We produce documents specifically for them, impact reports, things along those lines. I try and keep in regular communications with them through emails. I'll send a batch email to our VIPs and ocean ambassadors, perhaps every 2 months now. We've had Zoom meetings with them through COVID to keep them engaged. And I kind of give them behind the scenes information on the Science Center and what's going on. And frankly, I'm really honest with them. If things are great, we talk about that. If things aren't so great, they hear about that as well. And I solicit their opinions where I can. We haven't done a whole lot of specific communications with that $300 to $1,000 range, though. That's a group that we had designs on bringing on a staff person that could focus on that. And that staff person just straight up didn't work out. I dismissed them, COVID hit. There's that. So that's kind of lying fallow at this point.
Do you provide any regular email distribution of a newsletter to those members that have given below levels? Because that's a form of communication.
Yeah, those folks would all get our monthly newsletter. If they've had a connection with our volunteer program, they get the volunteer newsletter. We encourage people to look in on our social media, which is super, super active on our end, although we're still working to get the engagement levels up. I think our marketing group has a tendency to think about social media as advertising, and we know that it is not. Without engagement, you may have 15,000 followers, but if there's no engagement with a post, 800 people see it. So we have to reconcile that and strategize around ways to increase increase that.
Jim, are there tiers to your Ocean Ambassador Society? And is that an annual giving society or a lifetime giving society?
We do not have those yet, Larry. And I think that's an interesting opportunity. And I think Planned Giving Society could fit into that as well as part of that idea.
Any other questions that will help inform your consideration of Jim's challenge?
I do have one more question.
Go for it. You're always good for questions, Lisa.
Sorry.
That's great.
You mentioned campaign. So how do you frame this as a campaign? What type of communication and outreach, what makes it a campaign?
Well, the capital campaign that we're about to launch is fairly rigorous and discrete in its purpose and need. It's built around 6 independent elements that we tested in a feasibility study, actually with Larry's help. I expect, I don't know everybody's background because I logged in late, but one of the things that came out of the feasibility study process, where we initially tested 5 elements, was a donor who said, you need to think about this. And that was such a good idea, we incorporated that as a 6th element to the program. So you do all that with the capital needs and you add it up and you price those elements out, and that's how we've come to that. It hasn't been polished yet. I mean, it's pretty refined, but it's not polished for the public, because really we're in a world where we're dealing with our leadership gifts at this point, and trying to keep those ocean ambassadors warm that this is coming. And we talk to them about what some of these concepts are. But we have to be careful about there's a sequence here that we're nervous about, that we're aware of, not nervous about, but we have to be aware of.
Thank you. Yohi, are you raising your hand? Were you
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just.
Welcome. Glad you can join us.
Thank you.
to elaborate on your campaign goals. So the 6 discrete pieces, you describe them as capital needs, but is there operating support built into the campaign at all?
There's endowment support built into the campaign. And most of the investment that we're making will drive those mission-related revenue sources. And we're hoping that by broadening the base of philanthropy through the campaign, we give and the infrastructure, the fundraising infrastructure improvements that we'll make through the campaign, that we give our charitable giving a boost as well on the other side. I'd like us to go from, we're not going to be a 50-50 organization. I don't know too many science museums that really are, but I'd love to be 60-40. I'd love to shift that percentage a bit, and that would be really good for us, I think.
I may put a finer point on it. There's a capacity building component to the campaign.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that's not capital.
Yeah. Yeah, some is bricks and mortars and some is programmatic. All of it goes in place with considerations of influence on our operating model and revenue streams and operating cost profile.
Okay, I'm going to move things along and go on to Jim. Do you want to revisit how you're perceiving your opportunity statement about the midsection of the pyramid?
I guess the only thing that I would add is that there's a specific top to the funnel that generates the donors that I'm interested in. And I'm not sure that we have an answer to cast the net more broadly to engage people that we have yet to engage. I'm not exactly sure what our strategy for that is. I'm fairly confident that the group that we know, we can engage. And I just don't think that the group that we know at that mid-level is really quite large enough to sustain the middle portion of what we're trying to accomplish here. So it's acquisition, I guess, is my big question.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you have several categories there for possible expansion of your base. I think of, like, I tend to donate to a lot of animal specific organizations, but you have the environmental aspect and you have the ocean specific groups, and they're each seem like very dedicated groups of people, maybe not. And I think of them like, I think of someone like me who doesn't have huge capacity, but has huge commitment. And it does seem like that's sort of that middle level of your pyramid, but easier to talk about than actually accomplish. But
yeah, and I guess in addition to those things you mentioned, Cheryl, we're revisiting cultural history. We're revisiting human use here in the park. It's something that we moved away from as an institution. It was fundamental to our foundation that you would know from back in the day. But because we were so reliant on mission-related earned income, I couldn't sell history here, but we could sell marine science. And that's really shaped the institution. But now going into the campaign, we recognize that we have a cultural history asset. We want to be able to develop Native American presence here, and Odiorn is the site of the first sort of colonized representation in New Hampshire. And there are people who are very interested in that. And it's part of the story that we've ignored. And the campaign gives us a chance to reinvigorate that.
Sounds like an L-chip opportunity.
It is an L-chip opportunity.
Absolutely.
Translate what that means to the rest of us who don't know.
LTIP is the Land and Community Heritage Investment Program in New Hampshire. There's funds collected through various channels through the state. It's administered by the state, but it's not like a state fund. And they do yearly grant rounds where you can, for cultural, historic, and environmental preservation. It's a great organization and a great program. I've been involved in quite a few of their grants with them, and it's really great. But anyway,
No, thank you.
just one of many things. I feel like I want to have lunch with you, Jim, sometime.
I'm always open for that. I
Excellent.
totally would, of course.
Okay, great.
So definitely do that. This is the portion where we provide our thinking, our best thinking to help Jim, and he's going to listen to our best thinking.
Jim, do you do any well screen?
Bates, I'm gonna ask you this. We're not asking any more questions.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm the heavy hand in the room. Well, I would certainly suggest that in order to engage that mid-tier, you need a person dedicated to doing it. Because it's big and it will grow because of having a person dedicated to it. i.e. a staff member.
Larry, you're going to blow up my advancement staff here.
I would suggest utilizing a tool, some sort of donor search database. Larry had actually introduced us to something called donor search. And I think that might help in determining your mid-level's actual capacity, because even if they are giving at a certain level, they might have a lot more capacity to give. I don't know if you currently have something like that, but it might help you determine of those mid-level givers, asking a little bit more. It doesn't hurt to ask, as you know.
Yeah, we have access to those kinds of tools. The interesting thing is the human resource to effectively execute, really. Going into this campaign, I recognized that we did not have the sort of development professionals we needed to raise the kind of monies and cultivate the kind of donors. So we rebuilt from the ground up, and we're in the process of, we have 2 dedicated staff now, where we had a half a dedicated staff before. And we're going to bring on another half-time person in 2022 and establish a relationship with a grant writer who will work with us on a contract basis, on a per item basis. But I would foresee before we're done, there's probably another FTE and a half in this to get us where we need to go. It's all about throttling the revenue so that you can afford it and get the return on investment, and then deal with it with my board of directors, who are pretty quick to look at the ROI and are varying degrees of patience with that.
Hey, Jim, first off, I'm from Ryan, New Hampshire, so it's kind of cool to hear you talking.
Neighbor.
So, yeah, I grew up there and lived there for my whole life, but it kind of tied into what I was going to say. I don't think it was touched on, but whenever we do a campaign, I mean, we rely heavily. I work for Special Olympics Massachusetts, so whenever we've done one, we rely heavily on our board of directors. So I'm not sure how they've been in with like the major giving, or just kind of like this whole process of the capital campaign. But I know we utilize our board a lot in terms of acquiring donors with referrals or anything like that too. So yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was touched on yet either, about how your board is with this.
It's an important point, and I'll give a little perspective on it.
Hey,
Again,
Jim,
from the lens of the
Jim.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm gonna raise my heavy hand and ask you to not respond to that. And
Fair.
And I think it was a good point.
It is a good point.
Any other, I'm going to suggest, oh, go ahead, Lori, please.
I just had one thought, which was to perhaps consider whether a traditional pyramid is right for your organization for a capital campaign, given the heavy focus that you have right now on earned income. Maybe that traditional pyramid has a little bit of a different shape for your organization for this campaign.
Good point.
I'm a big fan of direct mail to uncover those gems that Lisa was talking about, and understand that the ROI on direct mail isn't just about the gifts that came from the appeals. It's about the donor you found who ends up giving you $1 million. That ties back to the ROI of the direct mail. But it may take 5 years to tie it together.
I don't know if there's any way. I think of like when I was a kid growing up on the seacoast, we went to we did field trips to the ocean, and did like tide pool tours and stuff prior to the Seacoast Science Center time. But I imagine it's very difficult to, I think of all those students that come through, and how do you ever like use them almost as an alumni group, like a school advancement program would, but it's probably very hard to ever find them again. You know, how do you find those kids, because they end up, you know, growing up and getting jobs and being philanthropic, and would have fond memories of the Seacoast Science Center and the educational opportunities that they remember. But I don't know if it's possible to get to them.
It's a good thought.
I have a question, one more.
I don't know, question, I don't know, the question with the solution, go ahead.
Question with a solution. As you're considering reaching out into the community to communicate the capital campaign, have you been working closely with your communications department to create sort of a public relations outreach that brings awareness to it and perhaps can bring new interested donors that are passionate about the mission that haven't yet heard of you?
Larry won't let me answer, so that is
okay.
a focus for us.
When campaigns go public, that is certainly an important aspect to use. No one should be no one who wants to support the campaign should have not received a request of some kind. Sort of our rule of thumb. Okay, I'm going to move on and ask you all, is there something that stood out to you in terms of what you heard from Jim's responses, question, or solutions that resonate with you and your situation at your organization? Hopefully there was one or two things. Or even reinforced something you already believe to be important.
I think based on what I've heard, that you might be limiting yourself, and that you should expand the audience for outreach. So similar to, I think what Shirley was saying is, you know, make it more public, because you never know who's out there that you might, that one donor out there or one potential donor out there.
Well,
I guess I think I was struck by the value and importance of doing the feasibility study, because it seemed like that really helped to clarify everything, the goals and the approach. And so that was something I took away.
The whole idea of this middle of the pyramid being very important resonates with me. You know, we're on Lake Winnipesaukee in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. We have a lot of quite a few significant donors, but it's really the middle of the pyramid that I think actually the hospital hadn't paid much attention to for quite a while, and wasn't doing annual year-end appeals and stuff. And we started doing that. And for me, engaging those people, whether they donate $25 or $150 or whatever it is, I've seen them grow over the years, and it's been interesting. And I think it has value that we often don't. It's hard to pay attention to all that detail.
I agree.
Go ahead, Shirley.
I also resonated with that in the comment that was made about bringing in a dedicated staff person or having a dedicated initiative for that mid-tier.
That's also what resonated with me, was bringing someone in, but even taking it a step further and having them just their job being doing personal outreach. I mean, I can't tell you how much just even a phone call to acknowledge that they're even there, it makes a huge difference. And if you had someone that just could like bang out 20 phone calls a day or, you know, whatever, and just leave messages, it kind of makes a difference.
Jim, from everything you've heard, what one thing are you going to commit to try and do?
Commit to try and do?
Besides fix the water main that broke.
All we can do is put up the signs and lock the doors, unfortunately, for that. We have to have others help us there. I think the two things that are coming to me are sort of related. One is the idea of the degree to which we're self-limiting our audience, the degree to which that we need to think about, can we really if we make the case that we serve a New Hampshire or a regional audience, well, why aren't we thinking that way in terms of our fundraising? Why are we thinking local first? Maybe we need to have a multi-tiered plan in light of that. And then the idea of the alumni is really intriguing to me. We just hired a chief advancement officer from university out of their system. She came to camp here as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these stories of those threads that once they leave here, they're kind of lost. And the idea of how important that is, the tool that gives our CAO when she's talking to donors is extraordinary. There's communication benefit there by figuring out a way to cultivate that group of alumni, whatever they may be.
Thank you all. Good session. And I'm going to take privilege of sharing a story. When I was president of a hospital foundation in Portland, Oregon, where 1 in 3 people in the region were born at that hospital. And to address the alumni, we put an ad in the paper. We held an alumni event. If you were born in Emmanuel Hospital, you know, come on over and let's party, essentially. And it was very successful. Just putting ads in the paper. These days, there's social media. But, you know, back then, that's how you did it.
Yeah, I was going to just say we did something very similar when I worked at the Worcester Art Museum. It was in the 80s, so it was a long time ago. But every child, for years and years and years, every 6th grader in Worcester went to the Worcester Art Museum in 6th grade. And we had a big campaign, much like what Larry's talking about, with in the paper and pre-social media. But anyway, it was called the 6th grade reunion, and we had a big party called the 6th grade reunion. And just people, anyone who had come on a 6th grade trip and had that memory was invited to come, and lots of other people came. It was basically a big fundraiser, and it was successful. I don't know that it had staying power, but it was really good for that one. If you had one, it's just a good opportunity to get the word out and raise visibility that people had that shared experience.
So we're going to move on to Shirley has provided us with an opportunity statement. Shirley's founder and strategic growth officer at Latino U College Access. And I'll read the statement that Shirley provided. We have built a small but dedicated donor base at LUCA over the last 9 years. Average gift is $1,000 to $5,000, tremendous average gifts. How do we engage them to move up in their level of giving as we approach our 10th anniversary? What questions do you have for Shirley?
How many people are giving at that level?
Oh, you're mute.
You're muted, Shirley.
Sorry about that. We have a small but very dedicated donor base. And at that level, we have about 45 individuals that are giving at that level to LUCA.
Oh, that's impressive.
We've been very successful in moving up. It's been 9 years. My largest donor, who just made a significant 3-year commitment to the organization, I remember he came to one of our first benefits and gave us a $1,000 check. And we knew that donation, his capacity was much more significant. And it really is a testament to the cultivation and the relationship building that we've made with these donors over the last 9 years. And each year I've observed, the science of cultivation as they go each year increasingly up, get more engaged with the programs, the students, attend our events, participate in our events, and incrementally increase their giving. Now we're approaching our 10-year, and we know that within that group, there are some that can even be, perhaps give it an even slightly higher level.
That was
What
what was
do
going to
you
be
do?
my,
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that was going to be my question in regards to like they can give at a slightly higher level. When you said, like, your question says move them up a level, like what capacity is that level in your mind that you guys are thinking of?
We live in the donors I'm thinking of in particular. Our target is to hopefully move them into the $10,000 to $25,000 gift range as a commitment to the organization. And particularly at this time, because it's our 10th anniversary, but we're also launching a capacity and scaling initiative where we look to double the number of students served and increase our school partnerships by 3 more school districts.
Debbie, you had a question.
Well, Shirley, I think just answered my question. My question had to do with, is the 10th anniversary the hook or the motivation? And if it's not the motivation, what is the motivation? And I think you just answered the motivation question.
How are you using it as a hook?
As a hook, the anniversary is the opportunity to celebrate all that we've accomplished since the founding of the organization and look to the future and what our anticipation and our hope is to grow and continue to do. The reality and what we want to communicate to our funders and donors is that the need far exceeds our current capacity to deliver. We've moved in the life cycle of a nonprofit. We've moved beyond the startup phase, and we're now well engaged into the growth and some call it the adolescent phase of the growth cycle. And so we want to bring these donors along and help us get to that point.
How do you engage your donors now?
Our donors now are engaged primarily through, I had asked this question because we have a very active communications team. who's also our development team. And so everything goes hand in hand. But we engage them through our ongoing monthly newsletters. We invite them to events. Well, when we were hosting in person, we invited them to our graduation celebrations for our students, as well as to our annual benefits, which also include students and families that we serve. And those have been really impactful in communicating with them. In addition, there's a lot of cultivation and care of building relationships with the donors.
I had a question. How large is your development department? And also, is your board engaged with fundraising as well?
Well, our board members, our board members personally are very generous and give. I would confess that they are not as actively involved in fundraising and outreach as we would like them to be. And I think that's the next phase of development for the board, is having them more involved in that piece, whether it's through, they've successfully introduced us to individuals, but they're not participating in the cultivation of those individuals. It's more like, here's a person, go to it. And I wonder if it would be more beneficial for them to also be involved in some of that cultivation and relationship building.
Absolutely, count on that.
Yeah, so we should really push. That's, to me, is the next sort of phase of their engagement.
Jimmy had your hand up.
Oh, and our development team is only 2 people, but we're looking to hire a 3rd person and coming up.
Rebecca, then Jim.
Okay, I was actually, you kind of just answered my question, but I was curious. It seems like the perfect opportunity to add a development staff person. And I was just gonna say, it seems like a really good time to either get a capacity building grant, or, if you couldn't afford to add the 3rd person it just seems like the perfect time while you're trying to celebrate the anniversary and bring all these people up to the next level. So it sounds like you're already doing that, though.
It's in the plan.
I was just wondering about if you have any strategies to really highlight community benefit. There's clearly a benefit to the institution. There's a benefit to the folks that you serve. But what's the strategy to really highlight the benefit, the reason that people are making these gifts? What's the upside in their community of doing that? I always try and keep
clarify that question. Are you're referring to the benefit to the community of higher education attainment among first-gen Latino community, or the benefit of our?
Well,
just clarify.
I'm still on my earlier question, and it's maturing in my head. It was like, okay, 10th anniversary is the hook. You have internal goals to increase capacity to, and this is what we're going to use your money for. But then there's that next level. If we do this, this happens in the community group that we're very concerned about. And to me, I would start by reverse engineering from that community benefit and then getting back to everything else. And I was just wondering if you had a strategy for that, if that was part of the way you were thinking. From my chair as not a development person, I always worry about our institution being too internal, thinking about things too internally, not thinking about what happens out there in the world, which is where it's really coming down for us. So.
I like your frame of thinking and the line of questioning that this is going on. It's unique, but to me, to frame it that way, but it is a nagging thought in the back of my mind, and a conversation I've had with our new executive director and our development officer, in that we have delivered a specific message about the need for the organization's services and the impact the organization has on the families and children we serve for 9 years. Now, as we approach the 10th anniversary, I almost feel like it's getting redundant and maybe even people are tuning us out, right? Like, I've heard that already. We know that education transforms lives. We know that, you know, deserving children deserve opportunity. So what is the new, I guess what you're saying, Jim, is how do we, as we approach a 10th anniversary, how do we frame the impact of our mission in a broader sense? I guess.
In a community sense.
I like that.
Lisa.
So it's interesting because I had thought about this question before, but it does actually relate to what we're talking about as far as strategy. Just curious, my question is about your audience and kind of three-pronged, like who are specifically, how are you connecting with the students and, you know, and getting them involved? How are you recruiting for your board? And then who is it in the community that you're engaging as your donors? So like overall constituents and your overall audience, and as it relates to strategy, maybe shifting the focus of, you know, who your audience has been, but how to expand that out. So.
Our connection with students is directly through the partnerships with the high schools that we've developed. And so our outreach to the students and our recruitment of our students, it works hand in hand with the directors of guidance in each of our partner schools. We really believe in a collaborative community effort in our program, which is sometimes unique to college access. A lot of college access organizations work independently of the schools. We see a real benefit of working together. And with the families, we host a number of Spanish language community information sessions that, oh my goodness, I remember writing in 2012 and 2013 with an intern. That's initially how we started, with just community sessions. And those are broader reaching to the community at large. There's a growing, as is throughout the US, a significant Latino population in Westchester County that is primarily made up of immigrant parents with children going to the high schools and school districts that are excellent school districts, but are lost in the process. So we communicate to the community in that way. In terms of our donors are across the spectrum of both Hispanic and non-Hispanic donors, but actually predominantly non-Hispanic donors who are passionate about education and the impact of education. They themselves could have been first-gen college grads who are very successful in business and have seen their life experience reflected in the experience of our children. Or they are parents who have gone through the overwhelming process of college admissions and recognize how unfair the system is, and they want to participate in leveling, you know, this playing field. So the donors are a variety of donors from many spectrums, young, old. We actually have a very young donor base, interestingly, because I've worked at 2 or 3 other nonprofits, and I'm always surprised at how diverse our donor base is, both ethnically and age-wise. So we reach across the spectrum.
Is your board reflective of your donors as well?
Yeah, we have a board that is 50%. My commitment was that I would have a 50% Latino professional board and 50% non-Hispanic board. I use those 2 terms interchangeably, excuse me. And so our board is reflective of that, and it's actually a very young board. I guess we haven't done average ages, but I'd say they're all in their 50s, but and we recruit
Very
individuals
young.
that are from is that young, right?
Very. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. Very young.
Yes. I know. For me,
Oh, that's great. Average age of 50 is
50s, mid-50s, but I think that the board is diverse in terms of representing communities and corporations that they work at. So there's this push-pull within board recruitment among our board chairman and our new executive director, who wants to recruit for corporate representation versus I'm more about community and giving capacity. It's the individual, it's not just the company, but there's this conversation going on about that.
I was going to mention, I was just going to mention, if you didn't know about the Posse Foundation, you must have heard of it. But yeah, so
they're amazing.
That's very, very corporate, but they do get a lot of corporate support because of the corporations who are looking to have, you know, a diverse workforce coming out of colleges and everything. Anyway,
lots of
sorry,
very
Larry.
good questions. It's okay. Lots of very good questions. I'm going to jump to solutions. A few have already come up. Add a staff person, get board members more involved with making introductions, right? Highlight community benefit, think externally and the community benefit, frame the mission, reconsider how you frame the mission moving into your 10th anniversary and beyond. So those are a few things that came up in our back and forth. Are there other ideas, solutions that we can offer, Shirley?
You might do this, or you might, I don't think I heard you mention it, but in thinking about, like you were talking about your events, like your graduations and inviting donors to those events, I also feel that there's great value, and it takes time to meet with them individually, and really get to know their philanthropic goals. You don't always get to do that as much. We do some events at the hospital, and typically staff is so busy that when I do a smaller event, I kind of hope that if I invite 50 people, I kind of hope like maybe 15 will show up, and we have time to really engage those 15 people and meet our donors face to face, and get away from the kind of, we used to do a gala and we do a golf tournament, and the event kind of atmosphere is great. It creates great memories and great experiences, and all that. But the one-on-one stuff can be time consuming, but very valuable.
Carol, would a conversation in a perhaps modified format of what we're talking about now, what we're doing now, might be sort of cool to do with a group of donors who are willing to do it?
We did that the summer of when the pandemic first started. And it was very interesting to have, we had a couple of board members, a couple of staff members, 3 or 4 donors, a couple of our significant donors, and other not necessarily major donors. And it was very interesting. It was a nice mix.
And is there a presentation or agenda in that event, or is it an informal conversations? How did you structure that?
We planned ahead of time, but we didn't have any formal presentation. We did have a couple of PowerPoint slides available to show a couple of points that we wanted to make, but opening up the conversation, letting people ask questions, and making it clear that our CEO was one of the people in the meeting, and making it clear that any question we were open to any question anyone wanted to ask, difficult or not.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Shirley, I think that the 10th anniversary is a great opportunity for those conversations. When we celebrated our 50th anniversary, we did outreach to quite a few longtime supporters and major donors and asked if we could have a conversation, in person ideally, if not on the phone. And it was, don't remember the exact percentage, but not a huge percentage of the people agreed. But those conversations were really revealing. And we, of course, had backup questions, but we really tried to let the donor guide the conversation, and really clarified for us and distilled for us, why people value our work. So it's a nice opportunity on the anniversary.
The other conversation starter is I found it to be very helpful to get folks to focus on the future in those conversations. And it gives you the opportunity after they've talked about the future to circle back to why they're engaged in the first place. And starting at the future and then circling back seems to be sticky in people's minds. They remember, I have a hand in this future and I remember why I got involved.
Yes.
Shirley, what have you heard that stands out to you?
Oh, I was going to offer one more thing. Sorry.
Go for it.
I know
All right.
Larry's trying to move on to the
I'm
next
moving
step.
along, but okay, go for it.
Yes.
I actually love the conversation, but the one-on-one conversations. So I think that's great. I just wondered if you could do anything with your goal to get people to $10,000 and the 10th anniversary, like if there's something that you could, whether it's a tangible thing, like helping pay for a paid intern or something to do with each child's experience, but where you could make a challenge or a goal to get people to $10,000 for the 10th anniversary for some particular thing.
Like adopt a school or adopt a class.
Yeah, adopt a student, or it could be something more operational behind the scenes, like like an intern or somebody that you have working in your office, or I don't know. Anyway, that was just my thought.
Sure.
That's great.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What's going to stick with you?
They're wonderful ideas, and I thank you each. I thank you so much for the questions and the conversation. This is great. I think the things that stood to me is thinking externally about reframing our communications on the community benefit and what is the conversation that we can have that takes our messaging beyond from what we've already been saying. Engaging the board, your reassurance that we need to engage the board in getting more involved in making those personal introductions, but also more involved in the 10th anniversary outreach and identifying those individuals that they've introduced to us, but cultivating them to give at this level for the 10th anniversary. And the smaller events, perhaps fundraisers for major donors, that will allow those donors that have been with us for the last 10 years to engage in conversation with us about the vision for the future and what it is that is inspires them to remain engaged with Luca over the last 9 years. It's for me as the founder, it's just wonderful to have built these relationships that have continued and have grown incrementally with each year, slowly and carefully, but to the point now where the organization is has a solid foundation for growth.
Shirley, is there something there that you're going to commit to do in the next few months?
Yeah, I'm going to commit to doing two things. I'm passing this information on to our director of development who couldn't join us, and I think that I'm going to commit to scheduling and hosting these major donor dinners or get-togethers in the spring. Hopefully by then this COVID will be a little bit better under control. And but it will be early enough that we can have conversations with them before the actual anniversary, which is in November. So the timing is good. And having these conversations with the board of directors.
Can I add one more thing that I think would be very useful with the 10th anniversary if you're doing a campaign, or even one thing that, again, Larry, got to give you a shout out. We did a board match, and so whether or not they already give that amount, or this might encourage your board to give an additional amount, it gives them recognition as board members to say, hey, we're so much a part of this as well. But then it encourages others to match what the board is contributing. So I thought that was a huge success of a former campaign that we did, and it, you know, it recognizes your core.
You know, it's interesting because we did a board match for the pandemic as an emergency fund where we reached out to donors and invited them to join us in raising emergency funds during this pandemic period. And it was very well received. We had not yet spoken about continuing that into the anniversary celebration. But that's a great idea. Thank you.
Very good. I'm going to move on. We've got time for, I think, one more. Thank you for that. Rebecca. Rebecca Wright. Is Rebecca, there you are. So you're Deputy Director of Fitchburg Museum, of Advancement for Fitchburg Art Museum. And your, do you want to do your opportunity or your challenge?
Can't remember exactly. They were both on the same theme, so.
Yeah, they were. Okay, so you have a small development staff. How do we keep major gifts moving when there's so many competing demands on our time? And second, how do we integrate it into a small development team where we do not have the luxury of devoting full-time staff members to major gifts?
And I would give the background that was in the opportunity also, which is that we've been very fortunate to receive some major grants that are multi-year operating support grants that have significantly increased our capacity in the short term, but they're definitely going to end within 3 years or so. So we have the luxury of being able to build our development team potentially just modestly over the next couple of years. And we also need to increase our capacity enough to kind of fill the gap when the grants end so that we don't suddenly shrink instead of, you know, we want to be able to maintain the growth that we've been able to have through these grants. So it's, do you want me to give more background or?
No, I think that's enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's start the questioning.
Jim, yeah.
What is your board or governance structure's tolerance for risk?
Who was saying that their board was impatient? I think it was you, Jim.
Me. Oh yeah, my
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm actually the very first development director that the museum has had, and I started 6 years ago, and not a lot happened at first, and there was some impatience, and now we've gotten these amazing grants, and our you know, contributed income has really increased substantially when you look back over 6 years. So I think they really see that the investment was worth it. And so I think they have a better tolerance for it now than they did a few years ago.
Yes, Rebecca, knowing the museum, which is wonderful, and seeing your questions, you know, really my tongue-in-cheek question would be, well, when you have the answer, please tell me, because we have the same challenges. But speaking, I guess my question is related to this issue of how does one make time for the major gift cultivation work amidst other priorities. And I was curious if you have in your own mind some activities that you would like to let go of, and whether those are just sort of in your head, you think, oh, we do this every year and it takes a lot of time for marginal return, whether you have identified those and whether you've shared those with, you know, maybe that prospect of not doing those with others.
It's a really good question, because actually the pandemic has kind of helped to clarify some of that, like the printed materials, and we haven't been doing as many like invitations to our openings. We've been doing more electronically, and I feel as though there's probably more things like that that we could that could evolve, and it's a good time with all this time of change to do that. I haven't really figured out what to give up though, no.
I got a question. Do you have a discrete portfolio of of donors and donor candidates that you are working, that others are working with their own portfolios, so that you have some area to focus on when you have the time to focus?
I've been working on that, just creating those portfolios. Basically, it's the director and myself who have the portfolios. The board is supportive. I can't remember who said they had a board who would give them names and then say you're on your own, but I kind of have that situation where they don't actively fundraise. They do bring people to events when we were having more in-person events to introduce them to us, but then they would kind of hand them off to me and the director. Yeah, I would say I have a portfolio. It's just so infrequent that we have time to work it. It's very ad hoc. I mean, occasionally, like twice a year, the director sits down and does a kind of a really personal email note to each person that is, but he'll do them in a series so that he doesn't have to write a whole new note each time, but he does it personally to each one and kind of starts with the, how's the family or whatever is appropriate for that person. And a lot of time, and usually those involve an invitation to come see the museum and the newest exhibitions. And sometimes those people do come. And I do a similar thing with my group. And that's how we kind of get visits going with some of our largest donors. I mean, he makes a real intentional point to meet with them, you know, once a year. And we always talk strategy of what is the next step for that person. And it's just, we have a bigger list than we have time to. I mean, I actually was loving the ideas about the kind of Zoom calls with the donors of $1,000 and above, because we haven't done anything like that. And it seems like that would be a really good way to engage people. So yes, there's a written list. It's just not, just don't have time to focus on it, but we need to. And I think part of, so we are getting, no, nobody asked yet, but I have someone who does membership and events and someone who does marketing and communications. And then I'm kind of it as far as all of the other fundraising. But my existence also created time for the director to do more fundraising, and he does really the major asks. So the two of us together do a lot, but there's not a lot of staff. And we are getting a part-time temporary, like 1 year, it's approved for 1 year, but I'm pretty sure it can be extended, part-time like development assistant to do data entry and check processing, and hopefully raise the level of data, you know, what we keep in the database and tracking our prospects and things like that, because we have pretty limited, you know, what we've been able to do in that area.
Have you done a wealth screening of your file?
No, we should.
What do you use for a database?
We have Altru, which is a Blackbaud product that's geared towards cultural institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as good as Razor's Edge though, for the development side. It tries to be everything, so it can track, you know, the admissions at the front desk and group tours and rental events and all this stuff, but it's not as good for just straight reporting on development stuff.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you have a giving society, like levels of giving, or, you know, like as far as your memberships are concerned,
Yeah.
the top tier benefits, and something to encourage people to bump up their support or give those multi-year gifts?
Yeah, I mean, we have what's called the Norcross Society, starting at $1,000, annual support of $1,000 or more. It's named after our founder. And it is when we do recognition of the Norcross Society, which we do in our annual report, feel like we do it somewhere else too. But anyway, we do have it kind of tiered, just grouped by amounts, but it's not, the other levels aren't really called anything special. And we do have special benefits. I mean, it's been hard with the pandemic to do kind of behind the scenes. I was pretty impressed, Jim, that you seem to have active behind the scenes events for your 1,000 and above donors, because we've just struggled with doing in-person events. We did something last summer. We had a tent outside for a while and we did some events, but we haven't done a lot where you can have food and drink inside the museum. But before that, we did used to have 2 or 3 events a year that were for the board and the $1,000 and above donors.
Our events are mostly off-site. We don't do them here for those folks. We take them other places, which takes it's logistical, but it doesn't put a burden on being here. And we get them places they couldn't get ordinarily. That's the reason we can bang out a bunch of them.
I like that.
I'm going to move to solutions. Okay, a few have come up that I captured to, I'm suggesting to give your board members portfolios as well, 1 or 2 of people they know well enough to be able to cultivate on behalf of the organization. You suggested the Zooming with donors more frequently. I'm suggesting valuing portfolios, meaning—
Say that again?
Valuing your portfolio, meaning if you had wealth assessment, if you did your wealth screening on your file, you might find that there's enough potential giving to warrant adding a person to your staff to pursue those gifts. And if your board sees the value of that investment already, you can show them real numbers. It says, you know, based on this formula and this valuation, we're leaving this kind of money on the table unless we pick it up with a new staff member.
I was going to offer a similar thought to Larry. Rather than a portfolio approach can certainly work. I look at it from an org chart approach sometimes, because if your org chart tells you what your priorities are. When I came here 5 years ago, I had 5 administrative staff and a halftime fundraiser. What does that tell me about what's important to my organization? And there may be different ways you can use that exercise to move the board into awareness. And I ask about risk because it's clearly you have opportunity, but if you're risk averse, you can't roll the dice and try and recoup on that. So additional staff, you need to figure out ways to validate that additional human resource to get you to where you need to go.
I think I hesitate to say this because we all know this, and I don't follow my own advice. It's, you know, how much of a priority is the major donor portfolio. And so if it is a priority, then one thing that's worked for us is my president / CEO has a year or so ago started carving out a couple of hours on Friday mornings where I know that he's available, and I can line up without having to fuss around with figuring out his schedule and stuff. I can line up appointments with our donors for him, and of course they've been phone calls or Zoom at this point. He would love to have them in person, but that hasn't quite happened yet. And it became a priority for us. And so ultimately he absolutely enjoys it. And I get these enthusiastic emails after every conversation he has saying, you know, I just talked with so-and-so, we had such a we had such a great conversation. And it's like, I mean, I guess like everything, it kind of feeds on itself. So he finds it so enjoyable. And so it's really inspiring for him to hear other people who have used the hospital or have used other hospitals and have conversations. So it makes it, once you realize the benefit, like really realize it in person and realize how helpful and interesting this is, then you kind of crave it. And so you definitely carve out the time to do it. And I have seen gifts from these donors increase. And so there is a tangible ROI on the activity, and so it's just an hour and a half to 2 hours a week that he makes himself available. And there isn't always someone for him to talk to, and we don't beat ourselves up over it. There's always plenty of other things to do with the time if it's not. But anyway, it's
That's great. I really love that idea,
Mm.
actually. I think that's fantastic.
Set that time aside.
It would help me, it would help him, and that he's the one the donors really want to talk to.
yeah, same
so
here.
you-
Yeah, no.
So how do you set up those appointments? I'm just curious. You
I,
always set them up for him?
So I tend to email people because I feel like that gives them a chance to think about whether they either want to or what their schedule looks like and stuff, instead of calling. If I'm just calling to have a conversation, that's one thing, but calling to ask for them to line up a specific time and stuff, I just felt like the email approach was better. And then I just start to work with them on, what Friday morning might be helpful. Sometimes they get postponed, but I arrange them, and then his executive assistant schedules a Zoom meeting or puts it in, makes sure it's in his calendar or whatever, and lets me know when he's going to be off on a Friday, so I don't line someone up for a particular Friday. And yeah, it's been very interesting, and just carving out that specific time just seems to really make it happen.
I like that. Shirley?
Yeah, Rebecca, is your goal to have in-depth conversations with those major donors, or to have a touch point? Because even ourselves here at Luca, we wrestle with, does the communication have to be the director of development and the executive director solo, or could it be a board member that calls a major donor, or an advocate of the in our case, an alumni of the organization that could make that call if it's a check-in call? So I'm just inquiring as to the purpose of the.
That's a very good question, and I'm going to jump in the interest of respecting everyone's time and grumbling stomachs, no doubt. But the answer to your question is yes, all of the above. It depends on the nature of the relationship, where in the process of cultivation you are as to who should be sort of next in line to talk to them based on prior conversations. So it's all of the above and different for everyone as to who calls who and when and so forth. You have all been fantastic. This has been a really spirited conversation. Lots of valuable contributions by everyone. I hope this process worked for you.
Great.
And I like to try and do them once a month, more or less. And you'll be hearing from me again. This document is available to you all the time. I'll update it with the video link to this session. And I hope to see you all again with reports of great success from things that you've heard today.
Thank you. It's very nice
Thank
to
you all.
meet everyone. You all are doing amazing stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.